Well, I can't tell you enough how much I enjoy that you guys enjoy this New Eden lore. So I felt, why not look into the Sansha Nation and give you another story on how they became what they are today. There are many horrors along the fringes and in the dark places of New Eden, but few of these are as feared as the Sansha Nation. The existence of the nation is a testament to the dark possibilities of technology that the will of one man, Sansha Kuvake, the genius of Sansha, founded and sustained the nation, but his vision was an intellectual elite served by cybernetically dominated slaves led to its downfall. Yet, for all that they tried to scrub up the stain of Sansha Nation, the empires failed and the dream lived on. Slowly but surely, the Sansha Nation rose again. For 100 years, the nation was a little more than a presence haunting the space lanes and remote corners of New Eden, but now they are one more a force to be reckoned with. Sansha Kuvake himself, who they believed were dead for decades, returned and reclaimed his place at the head of the cybernetic legion of the nation. The old empires see the incursions by Sansha fleet and true slave soldiers as they see a threat that could destroy them. So grave is this threat that they must call on the double-edged sword of their capsuleers to help throw back the invading servants of their old enemy. Before there was a nation, there was Sansha, a strange, a wealthy man. Even before his dream became to be realized, Sansha Kuvake's rise began in those wild and heady days when much of New Eden was uncolonized and unexplored. The Kuvake family, an old Kaldari industrial power, had made their fortune manufacturing armaments during the War of Succession from the Galenti Federation. As that war had settled down to little more than an ongoing border conflict, the empires had begun to look ever outward, encouraging more colonization. After succeeding his father as head of the Kuvake family, Sansha found himself wealthy but restless. He looked at Kaldari society, indeed at all the societies of the cluster, and was not satisfied. He had another vision, an eccentric and megalomaniac vision perhaps, but a vision all his own, and the colonization push would provide an ideal vehicle for his ambitions. Developing his own space technology program while maintaining a strong presence in the armament sector, Kuvake built up his fame and fortune. The Kuvake Corporation struck out into space and developed numerous colonies and independent mining operations. Over time, a distinct realm was carved out by Kuvake, fully independent of the other empires and highly prosperous. He marketed his domain as a new, promised land, with himself as its messiah figure. Sansha Nation, as this small empire became known, became a significant player in the politics of New Eden and was an ever more popular destination for immigration. By YC5, shortly after the establishment of Concord, the outlines of Sansha Nation were established, but it had not yet developed the lasting character that would make it infamous and feared throughout the cluster. With the ranks of his followers swelling, Kuvake was able to establish apparatuses of government, such as strong military, in his domain. Sansha's nation had become a very real power, but this was not enough for Kuvake. After all, his disdain for the core empires was deeply ideological in nature, and Sansha was not interested in merely replicating an old-style polity. Having achieved a measure of his dream, he began to cast about 4 ways to fully realize his utopian vision. At first, he simply preached utopian ideas, such as his dream of a nation ruled by the intellectual elite for the good of all. These notions quickly gained him more followers, particularly among those who saw themselves in that elite. The nature continued to prosper, and everyone living within its border, from close members of Kuvake Circle to the workers in his armed factories, had nothing but praise for Sansha and his achievements. Praise only fueled Kuvake's delusion of grandeur and megalomania, spurring him into exploring even stranger ideas. Sansha has always believed that humanity would be better off under his rule, and now he developed the idea of dividing his people into chosen elite free of all burdens, and a loyal army of workers and soldiers. Kuvake briefly considered using the technology to develop robotic servants, but he believed that drones, no matter how advanced, their AI would lack the creativity and adaptivity. Sansha wanted to build this new world order on the only platform that would answer his needs, the human being. But he also knew that this would only be achieved reliably to his standard with technology. To his knowledge, the best joining of a human and machine was found with a hydrostatic capsule, as given to the Caldari by the Jove some years earlier. After studying the potential of this technology, Kuvake came up with the idea of fusing capsule technology with existing brain implants technology to create willing slaves. The implant technologies he intended to experiment with were the main highly illegal, and of course, in order to perfect the techniques involved, he would need test subjects. Here were sown the seeds of Sansha Kuvake's downfall. To Kuvake, the solution to this conundrum was clear enough. One empire, above all others, could supply his needs. The Amar were the leaders in implant technology and suffered no scruples when it came to trafficking in human flesh. Indeed, the Amar empires were rather keen to operate with Sansha, anticipating that they might have gained new methods of controlling their vast slave populations from the collaboration. Large numbers of Minmatar slaves were therefore shipped out to Kuvake's promised land, and he experimented on these unfortunates without thought of their individuality. Sansha's every effort was bent towards turning his subjects into an utterly loyal army who would live and die at his command. Kuvake succeeded, and these biomedical facilities were soon pouring out a steady stream of cybernetically enhanced slaves, also called true slaves, as Sansha called them. The true slaves were used for every kind of menial labor, but their adaptability made them suitable for many tasks above their merely routine. Sansha also began to use these unquestioning slaves as guards and soldiers, replacing the entirety of the nation's military with true slave soldiers and pilots. With his army of true slavers providing for their every need, the scientists, philosophers, and other intellectuals became the nation's true citizens. Initially, most were unaware of the extent of Sansha crimes, but over time they understood the nature of the new order. Most of them accepted it as simply the logical and right outcome of the philosophy that had attracted them to Sansha nations in the first place. The true citizens helped spread the good word of the nation, bringing more and more followers into the realm. Only a few decades after this foundation, Sansha nation spanned several regions and was beginning to rival the core empires in power. By now, even the Amar were growing concerned, and closer scrutiny of the Sansha nation by the empires were inevitable. The few years following Kuvake's deployment of the true slaves were ones of turmoil for the Sansha nation. Many of those who have migrated here in search for the promised land of his promotional material returned to the core empires of their origin as true slaves. Others, for all intents and purposes, disappeared. Some prominent opponents and investigators of Sansha nations either died mysteriously or also disappeared. Others died in ways that were not as subtle. Kuvake was unable to stem the tide, and his many agents and advocates had no better luck. It was fast becoming obvious that something was very wrong with the Sansha nation. In YC-37, the truth of what was happening in the Sansha nation was revealed to the New Eden at large by the joint effort of a Minmatar missing person investigator and the Galente security agency. Presented with the evidence, Concord called for Sansha to surrender himself and face charges. Kuvake refused. Kuvake has long known that this secret would be uncovered sooner or later, and that he had equally known that the rest of the New Eden would fail to understand his genius or the scope of his vision. He had therefore prepared defenses to resist the inevitable. However, the Sansha Kuvake had not anticipated the strength and the ferocity of the opposition that would be raged against him. The 5 Concord empires, including the Jove, normally reluctant to intervene, banded together in a coalition against Sansha nation. By that time, those remaining in the nation were either the fanatic elite or they were true slaves. That, at least, was the position of the empires. The coalition therefore swept into Kuvake's domain without any mercy. They destroyed every ship or fleet they encountered, They reduced their settlement and infrastructure to the nations to rubble and ash. The Sansha loyalists and true slaves put up some considerable resistance. The strongholds of the nation survived for months, but ultimately the fall was total. Sansha himself was apparently killed during this final assault, and that completed the invasion and suppression of his nation. The coalition recovered remains matching Sansha genetic patterns. Certainly some true citizens and elements of his fleets managed to evade capture or destruction, and hide until the coalition forces withdrew back to the core empires. Nevertheless, the once mighty nation was reduced to ruined stations and settlements, among which scattered survivors and aimless ships eked out of existence. The scattered remnants of Sansha Nation were by no means idle. Many isolated units of the nation's space fleet remained, ready to obey the dictates of the protocols and programming, which would still doom upon the unwary. Others, more purposeful, had survived the purge. True citizens and some true slaves capable of leadership and planning were at large. Others, several decades following the fall, what remained of the nation slowly gathered together. The surviving commanders and warlords pulled together the aimless true slaves in the heart of the Sansha's old promised land. The scientists and commanders slowly began the process of rebuilding the nations from what remained. They built new ships and fresh stations, and secretly recruited new followers to the cause. Operating through shell corporations, go-betweens and mercenaries, they produced new subjects for the true slave conversion process. Slowly, carefully, avoiding the attention of the empires, and not without some infighting, the Sansha nation was rebuilt. YC-105, Sansha nation has regained sufficient strength to operate in an increasingly wide area beyond the Stain region. Initially, nation raids and expansion took place in the neighboring regions such as Catch and Esoteria, but soon enough they felt bold enough to raid the Amar Empire, hated for the treachery that the nation elite believed the Amar had perpetrated against them. The nation leadership had read the political situation accurately enough, for no new coalition was likely to be formed against them. The Yov were increasingly reclusive, and the other four empires were ever more at odds with one another. Even so, for as long as it could, Sansha Nation fed the illusion that the raiding was the result of desperate and isolated units of the old Sansha Navy, driven to seek resources for mere survival. YC-108, the nation began to make raids against the Angel Cartel, igniting a brief territorial war between the pirate factions that featured capsuleers fighting on both sides. A figurehead known as the Sansha Speaker released an ultimatum for the Angel Cartel and their capsuleer supporters. The war cooled, and before too long, the nation returned to inscrutable silence as New Eden was shaking from the events of the YC-110. Sansha's nation still appeared to many to be an erratic power, possibly even house divided. The Empire's intelligence network reported that some surviving elites were following their own plans and setting up themselves as warlords. Other claims that the vast bulk of the true slaves were old reserves following orders received during the heyday of the nation. In May YC-112, events forced a re-evaluation of these complacent assessments. In a series of sudden massive assaults, multiple Empire star systems suffered incursions by the Sansha nation forces. The initial invasion took place in the Empire system near Niaria, Tamal, Bale, and Camilla. But most shocking was the means of attack. The invading forces poured through unstable wormholes seemingly created at will by Sansha nation attackers. The assault were against temperate, inhabited planets, and approximately 200,000 people were abducted before the invaders were driven back. Sansha nation incursions escalated over following weeks and months, almost to the point of becoming regular. In yet another stock, an individual calling himself Master Kovake emerged and became the main spokesman on behalf of the nation. Most were skeptical and dismissed this as propaganda. However, others believed that the Sansha himself had returned, resurrected by the advanced science that the nations controlled, to lead his followers again. The vast majority of the Sansha nation population is composed by true slaves. Only a very small number of nation members are free from control of these enslaving implants they bear. Those individuals, known as true citizens, are mostly scientists, researchers, philosophers, doctors, artists, and some other. Recently, certain generals and warlords have emerged as true citizens. This trend may be an effort to strengthen the might of the nation's navy, or it may reflect some attempt to reincorporate splinter groups that arose after the downfall. Even so, independent Sansha nation military governors are somewhat rare, but they are utterly ruthless and indifferent to appeals for mercy. True slaves have no will of their own and are often incorrectly described as mindless by the outsiders. In fact, in line with Sansha Kuvake's vision, individual true slavers are very much capable of thought. Moreover, true slaves display varying degrees of personality and freedom, depending on the degree of control their implants exercise over them. Their personal psychology and the requirements for their task, scouts, recruiters, and intelligence operative typically presents an appearance and personality much like they had before being fitted with implants. Such agents and other true slaves whose tasks require extended solo or small group operation often retain a high degree of individuality. Those who join Sansha Nation willingly are allowed to retain their individuality and personalities without modification of control are known as the true citizens. They are the elite, new and old, of Sansha Nation, placed in a position of command and ease according to the grand vision of Sansha Kuvake. True citizens are typically those scientists, researchers, philosophers, and other intellectuals who have answered the call of Sansha's utopia vision. They work together to improve the nation's science, technology, and organization. Additionally, most of Sansha's top commanders are true citizens. These individuals are given great control over true slaves through ways with protocols ensuring their control can be superseded by Sansha's will. As the majority of its population are true slaves, who do not require money in any form, Sansha's nation has no internal currency. True citizens are given anything they desire, either produced by the true slaves or captured during raids on its enemies. The nation produces the majority of its material needs internally through labor of the true slaves. It has several colonized worlds dedicated to food production, while utilizing stations and mining colonies to produce raw materials and transform them into ships and stations. The nation has even several small factories to produce luxury goods for its true citizens. Sansha ships are well known for their alien design, with smooth, bulbous shapes and protruding spines. They possess advanced laser technology, similar in design and function to the weapon system of Marauders, though all Sansha ship classes utilize it. The most recent ships have displayed highly efficient energy neutralizers, powerful shields and armor repair capabilities, effective afterburner and microwarp drives, and extensive electronic warfare capabilities. The nation utilizes several basic hull designs, though they have great internal variation. The four most well known are the Succubus, the Phantasm, the Nightmare, and the Revenant. Blueprints for these designs have fallen into Capsuleer's hands. However, at least one other style of frigates has been seen, though its name and design has not been disseminated outside the nation. The nation has also discovered a method of creating artificial wormholes, seemingly at will. These wormholes allow Sansha ships to pass through, though they can be disrupted by continued gravimetric jamming. The method the nation uses to create and restrict these wormholes is unknown by the rest of the cluster, giving them a huge logistical advantage. And here we have some notable characters. Sansha Kuvake. In his origins, the scion of a wealthy Kaldari family, Kuvake considerably enhanced his fortune as an industrialist and arms dealer during the Galentan Kaldari War. His great wealth and access to expertise in the space technology field allowed him to colonize a great swath of space that is subsequently forged into one realm under his utopian rule, the Sansha Nation. Over time, his ideals and dreams became even more perverted into a grotesque vision of a select elite, led by him, served by legions of cybernetically enhanced and controlled slaves. Concord and the Five Empires uncovered the reality of Sansha Nation and waged a war that seemingly ended with his realm in ruins and his life at the end. Yet, decades later, Sansha Kuvake has apparently returned to lead his true slave legion once again. Visan Ankonin. A skilled and ruthless military leader, Visan Ankonin rose to lead the true power during the years when the Sansha Nation was rebuilding itself in the hidden pockets of the Stein region. While Sansha was reckoned dead, Visan was considered to many to be the effective head of the Sansha Nation. In fact, while powerful indeed, Visan always worked with the upper circle of the true citizens that had done so much to resurrect the nation. Since the return of Sansha, an event seemingly welcomed and perhaps worked towards by the elites of the nation, Visan has loyally commanded true power in the name of Sansha Kuvake. Kuratama Akaga. Truly one of the old guard, Kuratama Akaga was an early follower of Sansha Kuvake in the head days of the nation's founding, one of the few that managed to evade the purging invasion of the core empires. Kuratama was instrumental in assembling as many surviving true citizens as possible during the rebuilding phase of the Sansha Nation. When it became logical that the production and research function of Sansha Nation should be spun off to a separate entity from True Power, Kuratama was the logical choice to head the new corporation. Kuratama is especially reviled in the Minmatar for his role assigning Kuvake with experimentation on Minmatar slaves supplied by the Mar. Citizen Astur. Citizen Astur was one of the most prominent Sansha Nation commanders during the initial period of incursion and planetary raiding that took place through YC-112. Astur led numerous raids against each of the core empires, usually commanding the field from a capital ship such as a carrier, and was for a time regarded as the architect of the nation campaign of the incursions. Citizen Astur faded into the background somewhat when the figure calling himself Master Kuvake emerged from the shadows in the Stein region. Astur was confirmed in battle to be a capsuleer, with extensive additional implants and modification discovered on her various recovered corpses. Brokara River. Brokara River is one of the relatively few top commanders in the Sansha Nation's military who is a true slave. Brokara was at one time a slave in the Mar Empire, but during the early days of Sansha Nation, he was shipped to Stein and fell into the hands of Kuvake himself. He became one of his most successful early true slavers, and it's whispered by some that Kuvake was always rather fond of Brokara. Whatever the truth of those rumors might be, Brokara herself is as emotionless as the machines that riddle her body. Chelm Soran. Chelm Soran was born with an extreme autism. When this condition became evident, he was nothing but an embarrassment to his Amar holder parents. Chelm was put away until a chance encounter between Sansha Kuvake on one of his trips into the Empire to arrange transport of slaves into his budding nation and holder Soran. Kuvake, curious as to the effect his technique might have on the severely autistic, he offered to take the young man off the hands of his parents, and Shelm's family agreed. And Shelm was soon another of Kuvake's subjects. Shelm's unique mind, in fact rather quick and capable of great depths of analysis, adapted well to Kuvake's experimental implants. In the end, Kuvake, pleased with his new recruit, left the entirety of Shelm's individual personality in place without controlling implants. Chelm Soran is today one of the most formidable officers in the ranks of Sansha Nation, with a bold, relentless drive to succeed in battle. Now, what you might not know is that all these names that I'm stating in these videos are actually officer spawns that you can find in EVE Online, that I actually hope that they will implement in EVE Echoes as well. So when you're finding Chelm Soran out in space, you now know the backstory. And as always, if you like this, tell me that in the comments, and I'll see you guys again.